where did Season of Discovery go wrong? I just think people are getting bored of it. Classic WoW is an old game. Like, you cannot expect people to put like 150, 200 hours, 300 hours and not getting bored of a whole game. Like, some people are going to play it for the rest of their lives, but some people are going to get bored of it, and this is fine. Yeah, let's just see what he has to say.
Ever since Season of Discovery released, I've made many review videos evaluating the success of his new spin on Classic WoW. And I've tried my best to look at it objectively, pointing out the things that I like about it and the things that I don't like so much. Okay. And I got disemboweled, decapitated, and my head stuck on a stake for doing so. And I wasn't the only lucky YouTuber to experience this very friendly treatment. I talked to many other creators at the time who were also getting ripped a new for saying anything remotely critical. I now call Phase 1 the Phase of Copium. But I don't blame the WoW community for having so much copium during this time. The novelty and the scope of what Season of Discovery was going to be and what it could turn into was quite overwhelming.
But I don't think it's really copium. I mean, we wanted it to be good, and what's so good about a new game? We don't know what's gonna happen. We didn't know. Every single rune was a surprise, for me at least. I didn't know what was coming. We didn't know how many runes we would have, what effect they would give. We didn't know anything. And it was such a surprise to just start leveling up your character, seeing the 1,000 people in your server trying to find runes, inviting players to do some dungeons. It's not the same game anymore, but at the beginning, it's so fucking fun again. Oh, man.
What I never
you cannot replace that
was
first
how
experience.
The community would attack creators for being critical of SOD, and there was this sentiment that we need to not be critical of a game and stick our heads in the sand and jump on the copium bus. I understand why so many creators decided to simply just go with it and tell people what they want to hear in a very digestible and pleasing format, because I took a huge earnings drop for basically reviewing the game in a balanced way, speaking my true opinion. It's why I stopped making videos about SOD and just switched to classic content, because that was a much safer option. Being real and honest was simply not going to pay my bills. And now, ironically but rather predictably, it has become fashionable to talk the game again. The character arc of the World of Warcraft community has now taken its typical cycle. But to be honest, the critical opinions of SOD that most of the community have are fairly justified. It really has turned into something that the classic audience didn't want.
Yeah,
we're going to take a thorough look at the timeline.
To me, it feels more like Burning Crusade, but Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King, like, our classes changed so much that we don't recognize WoW Classic anymore. Like, we have way more options. Like, Classic WoW was good because if you're playing a class, you're made to do a specific thing in a group. You're made to buff people, you're made to do a ton of damage, you're made to tank, you're made to distract, you're made to slow, you're made to stun. Like, every single class, you're made to buff, like support class, like shamans or even paladins at this time. You were made to do this. You were good at what you were doing, and no other class was good at it, or at least not all the classes were good at it. But in SOD, I feel every DPS can pull out some good DPS, every tank can pull out some good tanking. If you're a support class, you do some super huge DPS, like the shaman is probably the top DPS right now, and on top of it, you're a fucking support. So, like, this is unbalanced. I feel Classic was even more balanced than what Classic WoW is right now in SOD.
Line of Season of Discovery to try and get to the bottom of why it has so spectacularly fallen on its. Before we move on, guys, many of you may know that my favourite game of all time is definitely The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and the reason why I'm going to be trying out ESO's new expansion this week is because the story will take you to some of the most iconic locations in the Westworld in Oblivion, south of the quaint but mysterious city of Skingrad. The expansion's questline will take you on an exciting journey to investigate a new Daedric prince never seen before within the lore of The Elder Scrolls, Ophelia, so dangerous that Himoris Mora had to erase most memories of her to make her disappear. She's dangerous because she is a massive manipulator of destiny, but not much is known about her true origins or the nature of her powers. You'll have to uncover the truth for yourself within the new 12-player trial, The Lucent Citadel, shrouded in mystery until now, hidden by the dunes of the Deadlands. This is a new raid, or trials as they are called in ESO, set within a forgotten Daedric vault. ESO raids are designed to make the whole event part of a challenging spectacle. There's usually an objective within the raid, and in this case retrieving the mysterious arcane knot, and you have to complete tasks and kill raid bosses in order to complete it. It's like a cross between a raid and a questing hub. The game is multi-platform on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and the base game, and all the previous content comes when you get the new DLC for Gold Rose, so check it out in the description of this video if you're looking for a new MMO adventure. Thanks Bethesda for sponsoring this video. I also put out a community post asking you guys why you quit the game, and we're going to have a little look at that at the end of the video. The first problem with Season of Discovery began at BlizzCon, with Blizzard's new infamous habit of false promises.
Blizzard know how to do that. Oh yes, they can't. Oh, fuck Blizzard,
SOD
man.
was supposed to launch with new quests, new raids, but realistically it didn't. We got rehashed classic WoW dungeons turned into raids, and although this was really fun, the novelty quickly wore off. And this was very apparent by the loss of numbers on Warcraft logs. And I think the main reason behind this was just how short the raids were. Even average guilds were clearing the raid content in under 20 minutes. At first this was great for the more casual dad gamer audience, but eventually got to a point where there just wasn't anything to do. Blizzard really wanted to resurrect the less appreciated instances from vanilla, and although I respect the incentive behind it, those instances were unappreciated because they just weren't that good. Most people would agree that Shadowfang Keep and Deadmines are the best low-level dungeons in the game, and although I like BFD, I've never jumped off the ceiling for a BFD run. You know, you just go in there and get your wand and never go again. And the new raid was basically just the same as the old BFD with the new bosses and new mechanics. Imagine how much better it would have been if a new BFD was a separate
just the water
instance
elemental was
with a
different.
new area, totally new bosses, new quests, new lore, and a totally different vibe. Even if it was a revamp of SFK, it would have been better. And I also feel like Nomagon was a bad choice. Imagine if the new raid in Phase 2 was a Scarlet Monastery raid.
Yes!
That's what we...
Yes! This is exactly what we wanted, man. Scarlet Monastery level. Oh my god, that would have been so cool, dude. I'm so mad.
Really wanted.
I'm so
So to say
mad.
SOD had new content is a bit of a stretch. But just to play devil's advocate, SOD really was, at heart, an experiment. It's a beta for Classic Plus.
Yeah, it is.
Blizzard want to test and feel the waters to see if making a true Classic Plus server would be worthwhile. And if we take a little look at the data...
I think their conclusion is... I think they're going to conclude that a classic server is not worth it. I think the people are just going to leave too quickly. Blizzard is not what it is anymore. But to what he said earlier, like there's no content to do at some point. I agree, but not all gamers are the same. Like I feel, let's say that 80%, maybe even 85 to 90% of the players playing Classic WoW don't have like 8 hours a day to play, while the streamers have. So when the streamers are playing 2 weeks of a game, maybe even 3 weeks of a game, and while they're playing in these weeks, they're telling everyone that it's the best thing they ever played. It's the best game they've ever played. SOD is so good right now in P1, and then 3 weeks later, after the launch, they're like, oh yeah, that game there it's so boring. There's nothing to do. While where they are at that three weeks mark, like the normal player is only gonna reach that like 2 months in or even 3 months in. And what happens 3 months in? Another expansion, another phase. So the normal player is like, oh, cool, another phase, right? And at some point, he's gonna get to where the streamer is at, because the next phase you won't grind like as much, so you will reach the end game faster, and then you will inevitably yourself to have nothing else to do. But it's gonna take way longer for a normal player. So it's totally normal for a streamer to feel like a game is boring like way faster than a normal player. You cannot compare both.
It definitely is. Phase 1 of SOD equaled a Wrath Classic population in Phase 2 Ulduar, probably the most anticipated raid of Wrath of the Lich King Classic.
Yeah.
Imagine if SOD wasn't a lackluster installment of Classic Plus and actually did have new raid content. We were promised new quests also, but what they actually meant was some new class quests, and although the new class quests were great, many people were expecting new quest hubs, areas, and new quest chains like the Missing Diplomat and the Defiance Brotherhood, or at least extending those quest chains. Vanilla has always been about the journey and the world exploration, so a Classic Plus server really needs new open world content. What we got instead
100%.
was the Ashenvale World PvP event,
Ashenvale
which
was so
could have been amazing, but it was awful.
It
and
was
it never
so
actually functioned
bad.
properly because it lagged and bugged out. What the game needs is very simply something to do when you're not raiding. And this event definitely didn't fit the bill. However, I actually think that the Blood Moon event did. This is one of the most fun parts of SOD because it developed
Blood
on
Moon
one
was
of
fun.
Vanilla's unique elements that people love, and that's World PvP.
Actually, it's probably the best thing they made in the entire SOD experience. Season of Discovery all boils down for me to Blood Moon. Blood Moon was the most fun I had, especially in the first days when you did not play the game meta. You did not know that you had to form a group with like 5 mage and just go AoE them down at the altar, like to make as much silver as you could. Like the first experience of it was so cool, man.
Skirmishes. Those moments where you get so
back
irritated about getting ganked by the opposite faction that you form a militia to go and sort out some beef.
Yeah.
It was an event that you always saw people making groups for, and you actually still do to this day, and it makes sense. It is a lot of fun. I even enjoyed it as a warlock, and we were one of the weakest PvP classes for that event and always struggled to get groups.
What?
But I think we all know what the true killer of
Maybe that in Phase 2, I
Discovery
don't remember.
was.
But in Phase 3, holy crap.
Now, still to this day, I fundamentally don't understand why Nightmare Incursions
Not
were
the incursion, I forgot about that, dude.
Many players say that it was just a retail event, but calling it a retail event doesn't fully illustrate just how bad this event was.
I think it's worse than retail at this
It
point.
turned into a slightly more irritating daily quest hub, but its real crime was how it not only cheapened the leveling journey, it cheapened the essence of vanilla WoW more than how Disney is cheapening the Star Wars universe. The XP per hour you could get by doing quest runs
You've done
in
40 to
was
50
even
in
better than
5
finding
hours.
instances of the hardcore group. So at that
was
point,
stupid.
what's the point in questing? What's the point of open world?
Yeah.
What is the point in vanilla World of Warcraft? They single-handedly destroyed vanilla World of Warcraft with one feature. I don't think it's scientifically possible for Blizzard to have fucked up even more. And it's a shame because some parts of it were fun, like killing the world bosses, but most of the quests became boring very quickly, and the way that you obtained the quests and how badly all the items consumed your inventory space at the point where you wanted to smash your keyboard or pull your hair out.
Yeah,
I think I honestly gained wrinkles from the Nightmare Incursion event. A project must have been handed to an intern or to a dev who has never played vanilla WoW in their life. That's the only thing that would make sense. It also made no sense that the event was permanently in the world. It wouldn't have been anywhere near as bad if it was only a limited amount of times per day.
Yeah,
and
daily
because
quest,
the
like they
rewards
promised
were
us
so
actually.
good from the Emerald Warden
It was
faction,
supposed to
every
be a daily
player
quest.
felt obligated to endure the suffering of this event in order to keep up with other players.
Yep.
And many players just weren't about that life, so there's no wonder why so many quit during Phase 3. Cataclysm Classic and the diabolical content drought was the nail in the coffin. It's so obvious now to the whole community that Blizzard don't dedicate enough dev time to ensuring Classic WoW is the best possible quality it could be.
Yep.
Another important essence of vanilla WoW that has been forgotten by the devs, the freedom of choice to play the game how you want. In vanilla, you weren't dragged down a singular path, a singular storyline when it came to questing and leveling up. You were free to pick and choose the quest hubs you wanted. Nightmare Incursions were a form of content you were forced to participate in whether you liked it or not.
With metagaming, people were fucking spamming dungeons anyway.
So when all the streamers were streaming SOD at BlizzCon, we were all watching with bated breath. The concept of vanilla classes having new abilities, new playstyles like Warlock Tank and Mage Healer was very exciting at the time. But class design in SOD got more out of hand than a toddler with an AK-47. Many people now feel that the classes just feel like you're playing retail.
Yeah.
I think that's a little unfair to say. I know for a fact that most Classic WoW players probably haven't played retail for a very long time. Trust me, classes and retail
they mostly feel like Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King. Retail is totally different. Retail is way more retail than what SOD is, but we are getting closer to what retail is from like the classic era servers, because definitely the classes have changed, and especially on the possibilities of using spells while you're moving. Especially if you play a caster, you have seen these changes. Like a fire mage can use multiple instant spell in a row. A priest doesn't even have to cast anymore. He can use shield. I think it's called BOM. Whatever, the thing that just goes to character and heal them like a fuck ton. Renew, improved renew. So you basically don't have to cast anymore. And when you have to cast, you cast penance. You can remove the cast in the middle of the cast, and you still have healed like half of the HP of the tank. Like, it's so good. Like, most of the classes have changed so much that you don't recognize their classic form anymore.
very, very differently. But the classes definitely feel nothing like how they did in vanilla. Most key abilities of vanilla have just been swapped out with other expansion abilities. I think in Phase 1 and 2 the classes didn't feel too bad, but eventually things got out of hand. They've now added far too many new abilities to the point where they become a mutated mess with no vanilla class identity left, and I don't think that's what players wanted. We wanted the irritating limitations of vanilla classes reworked and refined, with some new and interesting playstyles unlocked. We didn't want the only DPS options to be Warrior, Mage and Rogue, but let's be honest, the only real vanilla DPS class was the Warrior. As a hybrid class, I didn't want to be forced to play healer, or have our tank specs like Protection Paladin or Feral Druid much less viable. I mean, imagine having a tank spec, but you don't have a taunt ability.
Exactly.
Like that.
This is what they should have made. A taunt for Paladin. They should have buffed the mana cost for the Boomkin. What other? I don't remember exactly all the classes that are bad in Classic WoW. The Red Paladin could have had like a slight buff, but not too much because they can buff and they're very good. Druid Healer could have done maybe something just to solve the mana cost. Some just slight changes. Just keep Classic like it should be, but buff the classes that needs buff.
In the game. Not runes that make Shaman and Immortal and
this is why I think P1 was slightly better.
Crazy spells like Balefire,
because it still felt like Classic at some point.
Much. Some of the new runes were great and really fun to experience, but eventually I think the dev team, they got the ganja out and went totally overboard.
Oh
and
my
how we
god,
obtained
this is
these
an
new runes
abomination.
was a bit problematic. Whenever I wanted the runes, everyone was on a big mission to go and get them. But because Blizzard made the runes so difficult to attain in many cases, this made the game very alt-unfriendly. Because it was challenging to get the runes later on in the game on your own, or it cost a ludicrous amount on the auction house. Also, certain runes that you could obtain early on were very overpowered for leveling, but required a group for you to obtain. But tough shit. Nobody's doing those quests anymore, so you're just going to have to wait until you can solo that rune's quest at max level. It's a similar problem to achievements. We like the adventure, but we can't be bothered doing it twice.
Community thoughts, okay?
So I made a community post encouraging people to share their thoughts about why they stopped playing SOD, and it really did help. Basically, people mainly said what I've already written down in my script, so it seems like we were all on the same page. So I really like this one. Incursion has been the best form of XP and gearing, incentivized brainless farming instead of experiencing the world. This really couldn't be more right. Nightmare Incursions
were made by fucking retail devs, 100%. It's the same mentality.
Killed what vanilla WoW is.
Super
it's like
efficient.
Didn't actually understand what
no
the
exploration.
Point of
it's
vanilla
not
WoW
classic.
Is and why people keep wanting to go back to playing vanilla. I was hoping that the discovery part meant new quests, dungeons, and filling out parts of the world that weren't completed in vanilla. Instead, I discovered many retail mechanics crudely integrated into the exact same classic, very few updates to the world itself. It wasn't the discovery I was looking for. And yes, this is definitely true. It definitely would have been so much better if they actually did what they were going to do. What Season of Discovery really needed was new quests, new content, new dungeons. It didn't need rehashed crap with what I'm now describing as mutated class design. I think the developers have really underestimated just how much people love, still to this day, vanilla WoW, and how much people still just want vanilla World of Warcraft. Again, I think what the devs are missing is we wanted a refined version of vanilla.
Exactly, yeah.
With slight class changes to get rid of those irritating things that we didn't like about vanilla class design, but mainly what people want is something fresh and something new. New content, new quests, etc, etc.
Yes.
Toxic community, OP runes, class changes that are not needed. The biggest turnoff is changing dungeons into raids. What about the new content instead of cheap, revamped content, typical Blizzard cashing out on their player base? Yes, they definitely adapted a kind of mindset with SOD that let's make as much money with as little time. Let's try and get as many people to resubscribe to the game or stay subscribed to the game without really putting in as much development time as we could. And for some reason, the SOD community was definitely very, very toxic. I got a little bit of a section talking about that at the end of the video.
Is it that toxic?
I think the main issue is people can't decide what they want it to be. It's like a tug-of-war between classic players and the rest, which ends up somewhere in between where no one really enjoys. So yeah, this is a very good point. There's a lot of people who want a lot of changes and actually probably enjoyed all the class changes, but a lot of people who didn't. We've got the die-hard classic vanilla fans mixed with people who are a bit more open-minded when it comes to liking stuff like Cataclassic, Wrath, and maybe even a little bit of retail. Yeah. To be fair to Blizzard, this is actually a genuine problem that they do face, is pleasing the community when people have such specific tastes now in the World of Warcraft community for some reason. I mean, the other comment here is the hypocrisy of the classic community, which is also definitely quite true. I think SOD definitely has a little bit of an identity crisis, but if we look at the Phase 1 and 2 numbers, they were absolutely killing it. So I think that proves that maybe the best bet for Blizzard to do is to, yes, make it a vanilla WoW Classic Plus server with a tiny little bit of icing of the cake when it comes to, you know, further expansion.
I don't know if they're going to make that.
Not too much. They added too much in Phase 3, and ultimately that's why people lost interest. And I think this last comment, you know, further puts that point down. SOD should have been what private servers like Turtle WoW are currently doing. SOD is an example of what we could have been, but slowly turned into everything we hated about current retail. And I see a lot of comments like that. People complaining that Season of Discovery is basically just retail. So what Blizzard have done is they've added a bit too much of retail, and it's really lost that classic WoW audience. So my closing statement I originally had early on in this video, but I thought I would lose a few people because I wanted to be real about what I was going through when making content for SOD. Because honestly, guys, I was very close to having an absolute mental breakdown. It felt like I couldn't say anything right without receiving unnecessarily hurtful comments. And it wasn't, you know, constructive criticism or people respectfully communicating a difference of opinion. People were directly attacking the competency of my profession. And I think this is something massively overlooked about being a YouTuber. You were basically told you were job all the time, and most people never get to experience what that actually feels like, and when they do, it absolutely destroys their self-esteem. Now, I've been a YouTuber for over 10 years, and normally I don't think twice about negative comments, but you have to understand, during Phase 1 of SOD, it was absolutely unrelenting. It got to a point where I generally was researching YouTube consultant jobs and little marketing jobs, that's basically my profession before I became a YouTuber, and how I could shift into a profession like that. I don't think I would have quit content creation, but I was very close to taking a long break, and the community drove me very close to that breaking point.
Shit,
People have this cope argument that any online community becomes toxic eventually, but I've played other games, I've made videos for other games which are even bigger than World of Warcraft, and their communities are night and day, Jekyll and Hyde, compared to the WoW community. The WoW community is definitely a breed of its own, and it's a shame.
Don't deal with the baby boomers.
On your day-to-day life playing WoW, you normally meet pretty chilled and friendly people, but in the comment sections on YouTube and Reddit, the WoW community transforms into a toxic mob. And I think the Season of Discovery and the announcement of Cataclassic really brought out the worst in the community. And it's not just me. I've seen other creators literally get called a rat for wanting to adapt and change their content slightly. I mean, it's actually unbelievable. I'll have a video evaluating the current state of the Classic WoW community coming very soon, which will go into this a bit more deeper. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, guys, ciao.
Man. That's sad, man. This guy Metagoblin almost left his content creation career just because of the SOD reviews, man. He thought he was doing something wrong. Man, can we actually find one of those videos that he did? About Classic WoW? About SOD? Can we actually see it? SOD? Can we see the comments on it? SOD Phase 3, a disastrous launch.
So
this is 3 months ago. He did not make a single video about SOD for 3 months. Gonna be honest, I could give a fuck about sweaty world first tryhards not getting an even playing field. No one cares about world first. There are about 700 to 900 gone. I'd like to see Nightmare Incursion completely removed for the game. Okay, at least they agree. They agree with him on this part. On this one, Incursion feels like playing on the private servers. Roll back the Incursion code. Yeah, that was fucking stupid. We can have to find out how many people. But I guess this one was not controversial. Is Season's Discovery coming back? Fastest way to level. I just want to see one of his bad videos, like saying how bad it was. Wait. Phase 3, PE content forever. Maybe he removed it. 10 things to do. 10 add-on you need. How to make your stunning UI. Season of Discovery Gold Seller leaks everything. That's cool. How to level your Warlock like a god. The fastest way. No, okay, maybe he removed them. Maybe he removed them. God damn, that's sad. I'm glad he did not quit though. I'm glad he did not quit. And he was right all along. SOD was not the best it should have been. It's good enough. To be honest, phase 1, I had a tremendous amount of fun. To me, it did not even need to be better than that. Phase 1 was perfect for me. Phase 2 was disappointing. Just the Blood Moon event was so fucking good, man. I loved Blood Moon event. They need this on literal Classic Era, need Blood Moon event. Like, I literally feel on Classic Era it would be a good change.